Good morning, everyone. Brett Simon here. Hope you're all well this morning. I thought I'd jump on live and take some of your questions, give you some answers, and also a couple of updates. Firstly, good news for a lot of the UK lawsuit winners. The government have scheduled a number of, quite a few actually, a number of interviews at the London Embassy. So when we saw the announcement and we talked to the government lawyers, they confirmed that the London Embassy was kind of on standby to assist these cases. Now, if you're someone I haven't spoken to, and I've spoken to quite a number of the 43 winners, there were 43 additional UK winners. There's 2 or 3 of the people I know are going through adjustment of status in the USA. Some will be no doubt not aware of my channel or the lawsuit or anything to do with any of that. They won't know why they got that email on August the 8th. And some of them will be processing at different embassies around the world who may or may not look after them very well. London Embassy, on the other hand, is responding extremely well. And KCC seem to be doing the right thing as well for these cases. So that's really reassuring for those cases. So we know we're going to get through a number of cases, probably something 15, maybe 20 cases will be going through out of the 43, which is awesome. I mean, that's just really good, a really good result. So I couldn't be happier about that. We're still fighting for DV26 on the UK lawsuit as well. We're going to have to modify the lawsuit a little bit to make sure that we've got some standing in that case for DV26. I didn't doubt we were going to win this whole lawsuit. I never doubted that because the facts are so obvious. But how exactly they react is another thing, right? And at least they've reacted well for DV25. But they kind of haven't done a damn thing for DV26 yet, as far as I'm aware. And so, this is something we've still got to fix. Okay, so that's really good. All right, let's see what questions we got this morning. Good morning, Marcos. Good morning, Little Minnie, Leo, Manamela family. Nice to see some of you this morning. So let's talk about let's take some questions. The bulletin is kind of shocking and kind of not. Do you think Asia will have a better chance in becoming current going forward? It's really unwise to look at the visa bulletin from one particular month, 1 month out of 12, and make assumptions based on that. It's just unwise. It's just not the right way to look at it. The visa bulletins are not an indication of where the number will end up, right? We're talking about first visa bulletin of 12. It's come through with very high numbers. I mean, the Asia number, for example, was extremely high, but that doesn't suggest anything about where they're going to get to in the end, right? And there's no way you can make that assumption. The 10,000 number is completely baseless. There's no reason for that. But let's talk about some things that have got an effect on the case numbers in Asia and some of the other regions. The travel ban is going to affect a lot of people, right? And it's going to have the biggest effect probably in terms of percentage in Asia, right? Because you've got the Iranian, the Iranian selectees are banned, Yemen, Afghanistan. There's a bunch of impact to some of the biggest numbers within the Asia region. So that, not the visa bulletin, but the common sense assessment of what's going to happen, that will actually give better processing speed in Asia for other countries, right? Or for all countries effectively, because even some of the banned cases can still go to their interview and get their visas if they've got a second passport. So I am expecting Asia to move kind of quickly in DV26, but I'm not saying that because of what happened in the visa bulletin. It's just don't make that connection. It would be unwise to make that connection. So, we'll have to wait and see. We've got no data at the moment. We don't know how many selectees there are. So if you have case number whatever, I can't tell you where that really puts you positionally within the number ranges, because we don't know how many selectees there are for DV26. We know that there will be some people impacted by the travel bans. We don't know when or if the travel bans will be removed. There are lawsuits against the travel ban, and Curtis Morrison achieved a little partial win this week, which was for his plaintiffs. The government is going to have to properly adjudicate those cases. What they've been doing up to now is they've been given a 212F refusal, final refusal to travel ban cases when those people went to interview. And that's not right. It was obviously not right, and that was one of the causes of action that Curtis sued on, and he's won that part of it already. But it only affects his plaintiffs, and so it may change government behaviour, but they're not instructed to change their behaviour. So they may continue to do the same thing that they've been doing for other cases apart from those plaintiffs. Let me know if you have questions about that. That's kind of complex, I understand, but that's anyway. That's going to be something we'll probably spend a bit more time on at some later date. All right. So anyway, Ali. So yeah, not particularly. That first number was just plucked from the sky. There was no common sense to it, right? Yeah, that's what you have to sort of think about. Good morning, Joe. How you doing? Fort Lee, Virginia. Serving the nation. Thanks for your guidance last year. Proud citizen there. That's amazing. That's really good, Joe. And I love what you've chosen to do as a career. I think that's awesome. Hi, Simon. I submitted my DS260. So what next? Now you wait, Christopher. So I don't know what case number you have. I don't know what region you're from. Don't know what year you're from. But when you submit your DS260, you normally just wait for your case number to be current, for your DS260 to be processed, and for your embassy to have the capacity to take your case. And those things for a lot of people take a long time. I assume you're a DV26, because that would be a really weird question to be asking this far into DV25, right? But anyway. Thank you, Britt. May God bless you. That's very nice. Number one DV YouTube channel. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Life Chronicles. Yusuf, you think Asia going current for DV26, even if we don't know the number of selectees? Yeah, again, without knowing the number of selectees, how could we make that that determination? There could be 50,000 people selected for all we know in Asia, which would obviously be a problem when there are only about 8,500 visas available, right? We don't know the selectee numbers. And so we have to wait and see that. Now, we do know that a lot of those selectees will be impacted by the travel ban. But again, with the travel ban, it's like, is it going to stay in place the whole year? We don't know. I mean, there's a lot we don't know, right? We don't know the selectee numbers. We don't know what's going to happen in the future about the travel ban. We don't know if the government are going to have to modify their way of operating the travel ban, even if the travel ban stays. There's just too many factors. So to make guesses and pronouncements right now about how things are going to go in DV26 would be a bit stupid, frankly. I know people will, but I'm not that stupid. I'm not bright, but I'm not that stupid. Any update regarding DV25? Yeah, it's going well. Let me show you the numbers, actually. Present, share screen. So Zarthisius published the DV25 numbers last night. Here we go. There we are. So, so far, there are 39,500 people issued. And just to sort of take you through this data a little bit, to give you this update, 137 people are in AP status, which we know is part of the visa issuing process. So you can add that number, the 137, to the 39,588, and we get what, for 39,700. That still leaves a lot of visas left to be issued. and I can tell you that they're going to waste several thousand visas. That's pretty obvious. The reason for that is that although there are 16,000 cases ready status, and ready means the case has been scheduled, but the embassy haven't updated that yet. So it's usually about future interviews, right? But there are not 16,000 people still yet to be interviewed. A lot of this 16,000 number are no-shows from previous months. So there are not even, probably, less than 10,000 people are still going to be interviewed between now and the end of the year. Many of those will be refused because of the travel ban. Some will go into 221G status, maybe because of the travel ban, etc. Some of these 221Gs will be approved between now and the end of the year, but not that many, because a lot of those will be affected by the travel ban. They're going to be Iranians, Afghans, and so on. And so there just aren't enough numbers in the system for them to get to, for them to issue all 52,000 visas. Now, if you were paying attention to what I said about around about sort of January, etc., when I gave some indications of where numbers would get to, I've talked about this number before, saying that to issue 52,000 visas, they had to schedule about 65,000 people. And I stand by that statement. It was an accurate statement. But they have scheduled nearly 65,000 people. And I'm now saying that they won't issue all 52,000 visas. Why is that? Why am I wrong? Why was that a wrong statement back then? Well, because they travel banned a bunch of people. They've travel banned thousands of people. And some of those thousands of people are in this 64,752, right? So some of those people have already, either given up, they're not going to show up for their interviews, or they've been for the interviews and they've been refused, and so they're in the refused column, or they were previously interviewed but can't now be approved because of the travel ban. So there's a bunch of people, thank you, there's a bunch of people that that should have been able to process their cases out of that almost 65,000 people, and several thousand of them won't be able to process their cases. So so it's kind of interesting. We got to the number that we wanted to see interviewed, roughly, a little bit light, but around about the right number. But it's not going to have the effect that that we wanted or expected from that. When all the dust is settled, we're probably only going to see about 47 to 48,000 visas being issued in total, which means that we'll be, wasting something like 4, maybe even 5,000 visas, because there are 52,000 visas available. Okay, so it's quite a blow. Other important updates in this, by the way, there has been an announcement for Egypt. I assume most of you, if you're Egypt chargeability, you already know this, but the government have announced that for people chargeable to Egypt, the cap, the 7% cap, is almost met. Now, some of you are going to say, what's the 7% cap? Well, there is a rule here, and I'll show you how the rule is calculated. There are 52,000 and I think it's 26 visas available in DV25, about 52,000. And what they do is they say no single country anywhere in the world can take more than 7% of those visas, which means there is a theoretical cap that applies to any country of 3,641 visas that are available, right? About 3,640 is about the number. Now, that does not mean that every country has a quota of 3,640 visas. Doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't mean Egypt has that quota. What we're talking about here is a cap. It's not a quota. A quota is an allocation of visas given up front. And there are only regional quotas in DV lottery. There are no country quotas in DV lottery, none whatsoever. However, there is this cap that comes from above and says, okay, you can issue as many visas as you like, but you can't have one country that will take more than 7% of the global number of visas, which is this 3,641 number. Right, so that's how that's calculated. Now, Egypt is very close to hitting that cap. So that is not people interviewing in Egypt necessarily. It's Egyptians interviewing wherever. So people chargeable to Egypt, which would include any case where the main applicant is chargeable to Egypt, but perhaps the derivatives are not chargeable, are not, wouldn't by themselves be chargeable to Egypt. It includes those derivatives too, because everybody who's a derivative on a case gets charged to the chargeability country of the main applicant, right? So if you are, let's say your spouse is Sudanese, you're Egyptian, you are the principal applicant, and you've got two kids that are Sudanese as well, or let's say they're French. Let's make it really interesting. They were born in France and they're French for some reason. So Egyptian main applicant, Sudanese spouse, and let's say two kids from France, right? Two French kids, right? Complicated family situation. All four of those people will be considered chargeable to Egypt, no matter where in the world they interview. And therefore, all four of those people are now at risk because the cap is very, very close to being hit. And the government has announced this, saying that they are probably going to have to cancel some interviews. And they've given no indication when that will happen, but it will happen suddenly. We'll wake up one day and we'll see an announcement possibly where it says the cap has been hit and no more visas can be issued. So if you're going to interview and you're Egyptian chargeable, you have to make sure your documents are fully in order, because if you get to your interview and you're missing a document, and let's say they say, okay, just send us that missing document a couple of days later. In that couple of days, the cap could be met and you'll lose your chance forever. Okay, so you need to think about that. You need to properly go to your interview fully prepared. Okay. So anyway, so that's the sort of the numbers update for DV lottery. The other thing I just wanted to show you, I think it's probably in here now. If we look at the London numbers, this 13, you see on August 21, there were 13 cases sent out to the London embassy, which is very late in the month, very late in the day to be getting September interviews. Those 13 cases came because of the lawsuit. So that we know is, is a lawsuit update. And I've tracked those numbers against all the cases we knew to be winners. So the lawsuit has caused those cases to be scheduled, which is, it's great news. And I'm grateful the government is actually sort of behaving well, and going as fast as they can. That's a good thing. Okay, so that's the update for 25. By the way, other people will be wondering, and I'm sure I'm going to get some questions. Do I think further 2NLs could come out for any countries? It's possible, but it's getting very, very late. I mean, technically, it is possible to still be getting 2NLs in September for September. It's possible, and we've seen it in previous years. But is that likely to happen? No, not very likely to happen. That one that came at those 13 cases that came out for London are because of my lawsuit. It's not normal behavior that they're sending out 2NLs on DV25 at this time of the year. That's not normal. We could see that for other reasons, but it's not something you should be expecting. Okay. Happy Kids Cartoon. Good morning, sir. According to the ban on Iran and Afghanistan, I'm not eligible to call for an interview. No, that's not true. They are eligible to be called for an interview. Even if they receive their 2NL. Yeah, you're confused. So is there any possibility for the fast movement in the cases? All right, so let's address with your incorrect statement, first of all. The ban on travel banned countries does not mean that those Iranian and Afghanistan and other cases that we're talking about will not be invited for interview. They will be invited for interview, okay? They can be interviewed. And according to my understanding of the law, and according to what a court has just decided, they should have their cases properly adjudicated, and they should even be issued a visa. Now, the government sees that differently at the moment, and they're arguing that in a lawsuit, but they just lost one of those battles. And so what they should be doing is they should allow those people to be issued with a visa, even though they are travel banned, right? Now, why would someone be interested in fighting for that right if they're travel banned? Well, the travel ban applies on entry into the USA, right? And essentially, we know, because we've fought this before, we know that the president has that right. He can ban people, right? Curtis has got a lawsuit that has just won the position for his plaintiffs that says, yeah, but even though those people can't enter, you should still issue the visa if the visa is approved or approvable, because maybe you take the travel ban down in a month's time, 2 months' time, 3 months' time, who knows? If somebody's visa is still active at that point, if it's still there, and its date has not been met, etc., those people could then enter the USA because the travel ban would have been removed by that time. That's the gamble. That's the hope. That's why some people have sued the government to get those visas issued. And that did work that way in DV 2020. We sued the government between September 4th and September 30th. About 7,000 visas were issued because of the lawsuits in DV 2020. This is all those lawsuits which are roughly sort of described as the Gomez v. Trump lawsuits. So it was all sort of coupled together under one big lawsuit. There were a number of different lawsuits all grouped together. And that those lawsuits caused the government, or forced the government, to go and issue a bunch of visas between September 4th, when we got the ruling from Judge Mehta, and September 30th, right? However, all those people were banned at that time. They were not allowed to enter because of the COVID ban. But in February of 2021, that restriction was taken down by the Biden administration, who had since come into power. They took away the ban, and those people that had been issued visas in September were then allowed to enter the USA and become green card holders. And so that's why Curtis has gone to lengths to actually sue for that same sort of situation, in case the travel ban is removed over the next few months, right? So that's what he's done, and that means that travel banned cases could still be interviewed and possibly even issued, and that's why it won't necessarily have a dramatic effect in Asia. We have to wait and see what sort of effect it will have. It will have an impact because some people won't even turn up for their interview, right? And actually, unless you've got plenty of money to spare, you do need to seriously consider whether you should even turn up for your interview or not. And you will only be given an exemption if you have a second passport, a passport from a non-banned country. Okay, so for a lot of people, their best advice right now is not to attend their interview because it's just going to be a waste of their money. But some people will possibly benefit from that if the travel ban is taken down. So it's too early, Happy Kids cartoon, to sort of assume that and factor that into assuming that Asia is going to go very, very fast or something like that. We have to be a bit cautious in those statements. Okay. Avdux says, hello, Simon. I want to ask a question. Is it normal that some countries started sending 2NLs for DV26 and others no? Yeah, absolutely normal. This is kind of surprising to me that people sort of ask these questions, but I guess everything is new when it's your first month. You're a DV26 winner. You don't know anything. I wouldn't expect this question from DV25, but from any selectees. But for DV26, I guess it's kind of normal that you don't know diddly. So how does the process work? Well, when the visa bulletin is published each month, which happens between the 8th and the 15th of the month, every month, right? We get a new visa bulletin every month. And the visa bulletin that was published in August affects the interviews for October. That's how it is, right? There's a bit of a delay. As soon as that visa bulletin is published, within a day or two, we would normally expect to start to see 2NLs. And we did. We started to see 2NLs. Those 2NLs don't come out in one big batch. They come out by embassy, small batches, by one embassy at a time. Sometimes 2 or 3 embassies will hear about those 2NLs coming out and so on. And typically, the order in which those embassies are treated is a rough alphabetical order based on the city name of the embassy, right? So the embassy in Addis Ababa is normally pretty much one of the first ones that we get, and sometimes Accra and so on. The embassies starting with the letter B would be the next ones, and C would be the next ones, and so on. And it takes them about a week to 2 weeks, let's say, roughly speaking, to get through the whole alphabetical range. Okay, so that means that on some days they're issuing 2NLs for multiple letters, and on other days it might be one letter of the alphabet, and an embassy that gets that, right? Now, so that does mean that it's absolutely normal that there are some cases that haven't been scheduled yet. On the other hand, it's my full expectation that there will be a lot of people who are current who don't get 2NLs, and it should not be your expectation that every case under Asia 10,000, for example, is going to have their 2NL. That's not going to happen, because a lot of people submitted their DS-260 late, or their DS-260 will take a bit longer to process for whatever reasons due to their background. And so when they publish something like, they say Asia 10,000, they know that there's probably in Asia, let's say, for example, in the first 10,000 case numbers, there's probably 5,000 real case numbers, right? There'll be 5,000 holes in that number range. We don't know exactly because we don't have the data yet. But we can assume that half of that number range will be holes, right? Of the other half, the 5,000 cases, some will be Nepal, and they're restricted to a lower case number through the visa bulletin. Some will be Iranian, and then the rest of Asia will be in those 5,000. But all of those cases may or may not have had their DS-260 processed. And so we're probably only going to see, I would only expect to see Asia getting about 700 or 800 2NLs in a given month, like this month, right? So even though they made 10,000 case numbers current, there's nothing like 10,000 interviews going out because there's so many holes, and because there's so many people who were late in submitting their DS-260, or their DS-260 was submitted early but will take longer time to process because of their background. So it's all totally normal, okay? So, yeah, all very, very normal stuff, Avducts. Any lawsuit update for restricted countries? Yeah, so this is the travel ban you're talking about. And yes, Curtis Morrison's case, which is Thine versus Trump, achieved a partial win this week for those plaintiffs, but only for those plaintiffs, and only to say those people should have their visas issued if they can. But those people have not been told you're not only going to get your visa issued, but you'll be allowed to enter. That hasn't happened. It's only a partial win on the processing side of it, the visa issuance side of it. Okay. Still a good win. I'm thrilled for Curtis. I think it's great. And it's, frankly, it's common sense. When the travel ban came out, I assumed that they would be operating that way, because that's what a lawsuit had done before, that they would have people go to the interview and they would issue the cases, but they started refusing people straight away. It was really bizarre, and I couldn't believe that the government were behaving that way, but they did. And they even revoked some visas already issued, which was really, really bizarre behavior. And I hope that's being sorted out. I hope somebody sued them for that. So yeah, that was odd. But Curtis saw that and he did something about that. So, so it's nice to be a lawyer sometimes. I'm not a lawyer, so there's only so much I can do. I'm Asia 20K for DV26. Should I prepare my luggage? No, Yusuf, I don't think you should, and I think you're being funny. I understand. It's going to take a long time to get to your number. Yeah. What we're likely to see is that the numbers in the visa bulletin will probably be left the same for some time, where they're very high numbers like Asia 10,000. I don't expect Asia to increase very much at all over the next 2 or 3 months. Might not increase at all. It might be frozen for 2 or 3 months on the trot. We'll have to see. Manabella family says, I'm case number AF24 something, nice low number. We've received our 2NL and are booked for interview on the 2nd of October. Wonderful, one of the first cases. Thank you very much for the information. You always share it. It has helped us a great deal. Well, that's marvelous. Make the best of it, okay? Make sure you go fully prepared to your interview. Okay, and that means reading the instructions, by the way. Let's take some more questions. I have a newborn child, just added him in Add Applicant in SEAC website, and I filled out this form and sent it. Good. So that's all good. Avdux, did you mention your... No, you haven't mentioned your case number. So you're going to wait for quite a while because, depending on your case number. But it's good that you used that applicant. Did you also modify your own DS260? You should have modified your own DS260 to say you've got another child or a child. Okay, so hopefully you did that too. Hey Brett, could you provide us with more information about the signature of bearer? Like, should we sign our names in English or our native language? Your signature is a signature is not necessarily readable. It can be a squiggle. Like if you look at that stupid signature that Donald Trump has, the sort of thing where he's doing this, that's not a language as such. It's a squiggle, right? It's just a shape or it's not really readable, but it's his signature, and therefore it's a legal signature. So your signature isn't in a language as such. It's just a shape or a squiggle. So yeah, feel free to just do your normal signature. Somebody's speaking Kenyan, I guess. Pokea salamu tele. Receive many greetings. Thank you, Life Chronicles. That's very nice, I assume. Morris Maynard says, hi, Britt Simon. I know this is someone's question, but is it advisable to fill in the DS260 before the AOS case is transferred to MVC, considering the deadline is approaching? Which deadline? Morris, are you one of the UK? I'm trying to think. I know your name, and I'm trying to think why I know your name. Okay, so let's talk about DS260. So if you're doing adjustment of status, that's a very different process. You don't actually, you're not required to fill in the DS260. You are, however, required to send a payment to KCC, and they send you a receipt. That receipt is normally included in your I-485 package, right? Now, you're quite right. Someone's mum is the expert on all of this, and I prefer to defer questions about AOS to her because she is the expert. I'm not the expert. Even though I did adjustment of status myself in my own case, DV lottery case, I don't consider myself an expert as she is, and it's quite a complicated procedure. So I prefer she answers those questions. But for simple stuff, I can tell you, yes, DS260 submission is kind of optional if you're doing adjustment of status. I and someone's mum kind of recommend that you can do the DS260 submission even though you're doing adjustment of status, because it alerts KCC that that you're adjusting status, and they create a file, and that file will then be asked for later by the field office. And so, to some extent, it might. We think it might speed up the case a little bit later, but there's no real technical proof of that. It's just an assumption. And KCC don't do any other processing on the DS260 if there's adjustment of status. They don't do, for example, all the background checking and all of that stuff. So it's kind of optional, up to you whether you fill it in or not. Okay. And you say the deadline is approaching. I hope you filled out the I-485 already. Maurice, is that why I know your name? You know, everybody should have, if they're adjusting status, they should have filed by now. They should be using the early filing policy, even if they only got current in September. You need that extra time. So, you know, hopefully you've done that. Abducts again. Is the travel ban for many countries in Africa will be results in a fast-paced process for DV26? I think I've already answered that pretty clearly from an Asia point of view. Africa does have some travel banned countries, but not nearly as many as Asia. So, you know, so it's the same sort of effect, but less of it, right? Speak about mistakes made on initial DV lottery application that cannot be fixed on DS260. Okay. The first most obvious mistakes are the marital status mistakes. If you say you're single when you're actually married, and then you go through and you're selected, and you go through the process, and then all of a sudden you submit your DS260 with your correct marital status, you are 100% certain to be refused at the interview. 100% certain. There isn't a fix for that. Okay. If you say you are married when you're actually single, that can also result in disqualification at interview. Okay. In both of those cases, KCC will not tell you beforehand that you're going to be refused. They won't tell you that because KCC are not empowered to make adjudication decisions on any of these cases. And therefore, they're going to schedule you for interview, even though you are guaranteed to be disqualified at interview. So think about that and be very careful. If you left any eligible derivative off of your lottery entry, and the government later find out about that, then again, you're 100% certain to be disqualified at interview. No way around it. No fix for that. Okay. And, you know, I emphasize the no fix because some people, particularly in certain countries, assume there is always a fix, that there's always some discretion. No, for some things, there is no discretion. The CO doesn't have discretion. And for not including an eligible applicant on your case, so you left off one of your kids or some of your kids or something like that, you didn't include your spouse, those are guaranteed to get you disqualified later on as soon as the government knows that to be the case, okay, at interview. And they only disqualify you at interview. So by that time, you've spent the money on the medicals, you've spent money maybe getting police certificates, you've waited a year, then you go and pay your fee at the interview, and you go and sit down with the consular officer, and the first thing they'll do is refuse your case, right? So don't do that. The other bad thing that can cause disqualification is the photos. If you do a DV entry and you mix up the photos, so let's say you and your spouse, you know, are both entering, and you somehow mix those photos around, that will cause disqualification. Even though the photos meet the requirements, if they're mixed around, you can be disqualified for that. And that does happen every year. Mixed round, so you name the photos badly, you upload the photos incorrectly, and so on. You know, just be careful with that. Okay, be very careful with the photos. Also, the photos being ineligible, that actually, if you upload photos that don't meet the requirements, that is the biggest source of holes that we have. So I mentioned earlier about Asia, 10,000 case numbers not having 10,000 cases. I'm assuming there's about 5,000 cases that are holes in those first 10,000 case numbers. And the majority of those holes will be created because of bad photos. The majority of all the cases that are created and become holes, that's because of bad photos. And when those cases are holes, it's people that enter the lottery, they see you are not selected, and actually behind the scenes, they actually had a very low case number, but their photo is bad, and so their case was disqualified before the announcements. That's what happens to a lot of people, and it's the single biggest reason that people are made into holes. So yeah, be careful with that. But those are the big ones. Generally speaking, if you make a mistake on your date of birth, as long as it's not a fraudulent thing, you haven't tried to hide the fact that you've entered multiple times, then date of birth mistakes, small mistakes in names and that sort of thing will all generally be forgiven. You're supposed to correct those in the DS260. The DS260 should be accurate, right? But a small mistake in the spelling of your name or your spelling of your address or something like that won't cause a disqualification. Okay, so those are small things. So it's the big ones I mentioned about. Marital status is probably the most obvious. Leaving off a derivative is obvious, and also the photos, that causes a lot of problem. Okay. I realized that I made a mistake of my education info in the DS260. Should I contact KCC to make it right? I believe it is so important. What is your opinion? The DS260 should be accurate, absolutely. Now, I recommend, if you've got a medium to high case number, everybody should correct their DS260 if they've got inaccuracies. If you've got a very low case number, depending on what the DS260 mistake is, you may or may not be advised to correct it. Some mistakes are very, very trivial, so it depends on what exactly you've made the mistake on. If you've done your education information correctly, you've entered it all in there, but maybe one of the dates was wrong or something like that, don't bother correcting that. It's not an important thing. What's important is that you've listed all the education, all of your address history, all of your work history, and so on, answering the questions fully, your social media stuff. Those are important questions. But if you've made a little mistake on an address that you lived at 10 years ago, nobody cares, right? If you made a little mistake in the name of the school you attended 20 years ago, nobody cares about that, right? It's not sort of, it's not, those things are not important. Okay. DV26 in Qatar received 2 NLs. Good. So Q embassy. So, they pretty much, oh, well, hang on. Qatar, no. It's not based on the country name. It's based on the embassy name. So anyway, they're obviously getting on too. Avdux, another question. I guess the visa bulletin will be repeated for some months. We hope they achieve high case numbers in the end by this year. DV25, they've wasted so many visas. Yep, they have. Hi, Britt. If my host changes her phone number, do I need to unlock my DS260 and do the updates? No, you don't. Not for that. That would be a super, super trivial detail in the document that you just don't need to correct. Not even at the interview, you need to correct that one. That's so trivial, it's not even worth thinking about. Marcus. I'm in Liberia, LR West Africa. Oh yeah. Case number is AF36046 DV26. When do you think my case number will be current? I don't know, Marcus, because I don't really have any of the data to give me the feedback on how they're going to move the case numbers. But I would expect you to be current probably for maybe a January, February interview, something like that, maybe March. But we'll wait and see what happens. Okay. How's embassy capacity calculated? That's a decision for every embassy. The embassies write to KCC once a month saying, here's our capacity. We've got 30 slots we can dedicate to DV lottery winners. And then KCC fill up according to that capacity. They fill up those slots if they have enough people for those slots. So the embassy sets their capacity based on their available staffing, available slots for interview, and so on, right? And then KCC take advantage of that capacity. Aditya, chances of Nepal increasing to 7,000, and there aren't any 2 NL sent. Do you know why that is? I don't know why that is, but it's only one 2 NL, one embassy, Kathmandu, right? and they normally take cases consistently each month, but they don't have to. They might be saying, okay, we didn't want to take cases for October. That's not really a problem, right? So is there a chance of it increasing to 7,000 next month? There's a chance. I just don't know whether that's going to happen or not, right? The 6,000 odd number that was already set is already a very high number for the first month. So maybe they just freeze that for a couple of months. What about passport requirement? Any update? No, we're not going to know for sure whether they're going to try and force this rule through for the next lottery until they announce the next lottery, which will be the end of September. So we're probably about 4 or 5 weeks from now, we'll know the answer to that question. But that's it. Okay. Morris, I'm from Liberia. Didn't win DV26, but I'm preparing for DV27. Good. Very good. Come back in a couple of weeks' time and you'll see about a photo app that I'm launching. And what's special and particular about that is, unlike most photo apps, it's actually going to go and apply all of the checks that we believe are being applied in order to filter out cases. So in my hope, it's going to, for people that use it, it will massively increase the chances that that photo will be acceptable and therefore increase the chances of that case being selected, right? This is a huge deal. There is no other photo app like that out there. And I'm extremely proud of the progress we're making that you'll see in a couple of weeks' time. We hope to launch that within about 2 weeks. We've got programmers feverishly working behind the scenes to get that done right now. But I've seen the early versions of it, and it's great. It's fantastic. I'm thrilled with it. So anyway, come back in a couple of weeks' time, and I'll tell you more about that. And this is really important. People don't realize how many cases. I'll give some of the numbers. I'll do that data. I'll give some of the numbers, but the number of cases refused or made into holes because of photos is just obscene. Many thousands of cases. So I really want to stop that. Okay. Matthew says, can you get denied at the DS260 stage? If so, do they let you know, or do you find out at interview? No, you don't get denied at DS260 stage. You can only get denied when you sit in front of a consular officer and you have your interview. Right? That's when you get denied. Now, is it possible that KCC have red flagged your case and that goes to the consular officer and they know there's a problem with it? Yeah, that absolutely happens. But you haven't actually been denied until you get to your interview, and then you'll be denied. Okay. What is administration processing status and why? There's a specific status for administrative processing that shows in the CX status, which we know to be to do with the visa printing process, right? Now, that name, unfortunately, administrative processing, used to be how we referred to 221G cases. 221G is a period of time when your case has technically been refused, but it's a temporary refusal. It can be overcome. And so that's because you're missing a document or two, and you're going to feed that document back to the embassy, after the interview over the next few days or something. Perhaps your medical wasn't ready when you went for the interview or something like that. During that period of time, you'll be on 221G. 221G is also used for cases that had all of their documents complete at the interview, but they need some additional background checking. And those people then wait for some weeks, hopefully, sometimes for some months, while their case is being processed behind the scenes. And that's a period of processing after the interview, right? So that's 221G. So I'm not quite sure which administrative processing you're asking about, but if you hear people talking about administrative processing, more often than not, they're actually talking about 221G, which is that temporary refusal that I'm talking about. Okay, but the CAC status is the clue to all of that. It tells you which status you're on. Okay, so after 30th September 25, can they still issue 2NL for 2025? If the case is already staged, well, that's going to be the end. It's absolutely 100% the end. They're not going to issue any more 2NLs. They're not going to, even if you, let's say you went for an interview on the 29th of the month or the 30th of the month, which you can do. The 30th of September there'll be some interviews happening on that day, and those people could be approved on that day, and that's fine. However, if they are not approved on that day, there is no possibility that they will be approved the next day or any other day after that. The deadline is absolute. It's a complete end to the chances. Doesn't matter if you're in 221G. Doesn't matter if you missed your appointment. There is no excuse. There is no way around that. The deadline is final. Okay. Now we've sued to try and hold visas open, and we lost that on appeal. That part of it was lost on appeal, government appeal. We won that case. Visas were set aside. 9,095 visas were set aside from the DV 2020 case to be issued after the deadline. Judge Mehta believed that that was possible. However, in the end, an appeal court, a panel of 3 judges, decided that wasn't possible. And all of those reserved visas were lost. So, there's nothing we can do after the 30th of September. That's the message we should take away from that lawsuit. Okay. Do we know the number of visas available for DV26? It's about 52,000 again, roughly speaking. Hello, sir. Law F212 states that the president has the right to deny entry, but not prevent the issuance of visas. So why did the court rule in favor of the plaintiffs only? Okay, so firstly, you're telling me something I've told you. I know you don't need to tell me that. I know that, right? But your question is, why did the court rule in favor of the plaintiffs only? Okay, well, in a lawsuit, you need standing for a start. Now, that means that you have to have been wronged and you are suing on your own behalf. So in, for example, the UK lawsuit, I used my daughter's entry into DV25 as the reason to be able to sue the government. I needed someone with standing, and my daughter had that standing, okay? In Curtis Morrison's lawsuit against the presidential entry ban, he had, I think, 35 people on his case, and they're all named plaintiffs. They're all named in the lawsuit. There's those people are asking for relief because they have been harmed, and they can have their case heard, and they can have their complaint addressed. And that's what's happened. Those people on that lawsuit have had that addressed. However, there's another thing that we did in DV 2020 was to create a class, and so and it becomes a class action. What that means is that those 35 people, for example, could have represented any other case like them, right? And they would have been representative members of a class, right? And that actually happened in DV 2020. However, to get a class certified by the court, to ask the court to say, we want you to protect these 35 people and anybody unnamed that has exactly their same circumstances, right, i.e. affected by the travel ban. In order to do that, you have to go through a special process in that lawsuit, which is complicated, time-consuming, and costly. Now, who's going to pay that cost? Right? In the DV 2020 cases, we achieved that through a lot of pro bono, meaning free work done by a lot of really good lawyers, right? And so we achieved that class action. But who was going to pay for it in this action that Curtis Morrison just did? Why should those 35 people pay, as they have paid, and then pay more money to protect everyone else? They didn't need to do that. And so the class action didn't really make sense, right? And therefore the judge has ruled only on what's before him, and can't just randomly say, okay, I'm going to protect everyone like you. Now, a couple of things can happen in that case. The judge can say, this should be a class. We should protect those people. The judge could say that, or the lawyers could say that. But as I say, it would cost more money, and there's no one to pay that bill, right? Nobody wants to pay that bill. And so a judge could have given relief to a class of people, but that didn't happen. And so if you want protection, the lesson here is that you really need to pay for your own lawsuit. There are some exceptions to that. The UK lawsuit is an exception to that because of the way that we set it up and because of the way that it had to be argued. But that was always the intent. I was only using my daughter to be a representative, and I knew I could achieve my goals by proving that they had made a mistake. And I assumed, correctly as it turned out, that the government would then try and rectify their error of their own volition, which is what they actually did a week before we even were scheduled to sort of meet on that lawsuit. Now, could the government of their own volition now behave properly on the travel ban? They could do that, or they could continue to do the wrong thing, right? That's up to the law. That's up to the government to decide how they operate. So if I were running the government, I would turn around and say, hey, we've been making a mistake here, guys. The lawsuit has just shown us that we are treating people badly by not issuing visas. So we should issue those visas, right? The government could change their behavior, but there's no court that is forcing them to change their behavior. There's no judgment that is forcing them to change their behavior. And that's why, they may or may not do that. Okay. So, it's very normal for courts to rule only in favor of the plaintiffs, and you actually have to do something different if you want a different result. Okay. Dooney, does this mean that the winners of the DV26 should file the same lawsuit knowing that the president alone has the right to prevent entry? They could do. That's something worth discussing with Curtis. I mean, or other lawyers perhaps that might want to file that same lawsuit. But again, the part that he's won is only on the discussion about whether those cases should be issued a visa or not. That doesn't mean they will be allowed to enter. So while the travel ban is in place, those people have still got a problem. Hey, Mr. Ratchet, how you doing? Hope all is well. Any update for us on your app? Yeah, 2 weeks' time. It's going well. There's a lot of tired people at the moment, but yeah, we're hoping to have that in the first week or so in September. What I love about our embassy is that you have to go 2 weeks before the interview date for the document review. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. I like that. It gives you time to correct any document errors before you actually attend the real interview. So it's kind of nice. But it does mean you have to have 2 days off or something, or go to the embassy twice. Maybe that's why they don't do it everywhere. Mr. Ratchet, when can we expect an update for UK DV26? I imagine mid-September. No, later than that, I think, Mr. Ratchet. It's going to be later than that. I'm not really worried about the deadline. We have just agreed, the judge has agreed, and we agreed that the government filed a request to delay their next filing to give us a response until roughly the end of September. I think it's the 24th or 25th of September. We were fine with that. We chose not to fight that. We chose to agree with that because they'd already given us the relief that we needed for DV25. And resolving DV26, if that happens in September, October, November, December, it doesn't matter when. They're going to have enough time to process those cases. It's not like, August the 8th, which is when the DV25 cases found out they were winners, right? There's going to be a lot more time for those DV26 cases. So it's kind of frustrating that we don't know, but we know what the outcome is going to be. We're going to win this part of the lawsuit as well. We know how this movie will end. We just have to sit and wait and watch the end of the movie, and and just be calm and patient, right? So, of course, the terrible piece is that now there's a bunch of people who entered the DV lottery who all will be thinking, hey, maybe I've been selected, but none of them will know until we can actually have that selection process. So yeah, those people are kept on tenterhooks for a while longer. But in real terms, it won't affect them. Other than not knowing, it won't affect them. That's That's why we're not arguing that piece of it, Mr. Ratchet. Anyway, Khan Penn. Are you Sean Penn's brother or something? I'm DV25 winner. My case number is AF37K. My embassy is Abu Dhabi, but I still haven't received my 2NL. Is there any hope for that, sir? I always shudder with these questions because I try and be accurate in what I say. So let me try and be accurate here. Technically, there is still a possibility that you will get the 2NL. Will that happen? Probably not. You probably have lost your chance already, right? It could happen. We had 2NLs in DV22. I was explaining this to someone the other day that was trying to make the connection and arguing with me. I don't know why people argue with me sometimes. Why would you argue with someone that's been doing this for 13 years and you've just learned this like last week? Why would you do that? That's incredibly arrogant, frankly, to think that you know more than someone who's been talking about this and helping people through this process for 13 years. Incredibly arrogant. But someone did that the other day, and they were telling me that and got really stroppy with me. Australian woman, I think, got pissy with me. Said I was calling her a liar and all this sort of thing. I was like, oh dear. Anyway, her point was that that there has to be a 6-week gap between 2NL and the interview, and that's not true. That's not a part of the law. It's not true. And not only is it not a part of the law, we have seen it many, many times not be the case. She went on to say that she had been told that by the Sydney embassy, and they may have said something along those lines. They may have said exactly that. It doesn't matter what they said. It doesn't matter what she heard. I suspect she heard incorrectly and didn't listen to what was being said properly. But even if they said exactly what she said, it still doesn't make it true. And so I demonstrated that not only other embassies, but Sydney themselves have taken cases with a lot less than 6 weeks gap between the 2NL and the interview. And quite famously, there were some 2NLs that came out in DV22 on September the 29th for Mumbai embassy, where those interviews were arranged for the very next day. And Mumbai did an incredible thing. They arranged for a doctor to be waiting. They told people to go ahead and go to this doctor address and then come to the office. And the Mumbai embassy managed to issue, I think it was about 4 or 5 cases, where they stayed open till kind of midnight or something to issue these last few cases that they could. That was DV 2022. And it just shows that, yes, up to the 30th of the month of September the 30th, something weird could happen, which is why I try and say when I answer these questions about this one is about Abu Dhabi, I don't think that Abu Dhabi are going to take any more cases for DV25. I don't think we're going to see very many more cases getting 2NLs full stop, with the exception of UK cases because of the lawsuit. So I think it's over for most people, but I can't really say that with 100% certainty. And there may be some individual cases that come at this embassy or that embassy. But the people that are waiting for another miracle from Nairobi, or they're waiting for, Addis to send more, or they're waiting for Abu Dhabi to send more cases, generally speaking, those people are going to be disappointed. And I think you will be too. So I'm sorry about that, Khan. But that's my honest opinion. It doesn't mean I'm always right, but probably am. I talked about the US embassy in Cairo, but I talked about Egyptian cases nearing the 7% cap. But it does not mean that Cairo is the only embassy where that is affected, right? It's about the chargeability of the cases, not where they interview. Okay. Can address change on the DS260 affect my process? Not really, Sam. It doesn't really slow you up. No, it doesn't really affect your process. Juan Francisco Aguirre. Hi, Simon. I'm DV26 winner, but I have quite a big number. Can I apply for DV27 lottery? Yes, absolutely, Juan. You should do. Everyone should do. Even if you don't have a high case number, none of us have got a crystal ball. We can't see what the future will bring. And the DV27 lottery will be a free entry again. And so let's just do that, right? Everybody should enter, right? But just make sure your photo is good and use my app for that. So, we'll see that soon. Siraj, hello, sir. I'm a 2026 DV winner from Nepal, and for October, the case number has been updated to 6,000. My case number is between 4,500 and 5,000. When will second letter be issued? Any guess? No, I got no guess. I don't know what Kathmandu are doing this month. So all I would say to you, Suraj, is look, in any normal year, you wouldn't be anywhere close to being current. You're current this year. Great, good for you. Now be patient. Okay, be patient. That's the thing. There's no need for you to constantly have a guess. When am I going to be interviewed? There's no need. Just be patient. And when the email comes, you'll see the email, and it'll be like Christmas Day. Some of you are like kids. Christmas Day is coming up, and on the 20th of the month, you're like, I want to open my presents. No, just wait till Christmas Day, right? And then open your presents on Christmas Day. It'll be lovely that way, right? You don't always have a prediction. You don't always have to shake the bloody box and see what's inside the gift. Just act like grown-ups and enjoy the day. The day is special. And the day you get your 2NL will be special. So just wait for it, okay? Hi, Brett. Based on the late released visa bulletin, do you project for case number AF 68,000 to be called for an interview? What late released bulletin? It wasn't late. What are you talking about? Well, the visa bulletin for DV26 wasn't late. Maybe you mean last release visa bulletin. Okay, not late. Okay, based on the last visa bulletin, does that mean anything about whether we're going to get to AF 68,000? No, it doesn't mean a damn thing about that. Just because they start off at this number or that number, that does not determine whether they're going to get in 12 visa bulletins all the way to 68,000 or beyond. Completely unable to guess that based on the first visa bulletin. That's like saying I'm about to go on a 12-mile cycle race, right? And there are 100 cyclists in this race, and they all start and they all pedal as fast as they can in the first mile. Do you know after that first mile, based on how those people are pedaling, all 100 of them, do you know which one's going to be the winner? Do you know what time the winning entry will come in? No, you don't know anything. They could all pedal like hell for the first 3 miles, and then they could all collapse dead with heart attacks, and nobody wins. Nobody knows, right? Nobody knows what's going to happen. You have to wait until the end of the 12-mile race. And in the same way, you have to wait until the end of the 12 months of the visa bulletin to know what that final visa bulletin will say. Okay, we can make some predictions, yeah, to an extent, but those predictions aren't always going to be accurate because you don't really know what's going to happen. And right now we can't make predictions because we don't even know how many selectees there are in DV26. We have no idea. Nobody has any idea. So anybody making predictions based on the first visa bulletin is officially an idiot. Anybody making predictions for DV26 pretending they know what's going to happen for each of the regions, they're officially idiots too. And there are people out there who are doing that right now. And if you want those idiotic predictions, you can go and find them, but they're idiotic, right? So, Rebecca, thank you for your updates. I'm a DV26 case number 37K, Nairobi Embassy. Considering DV25 cases being very slow in schedules, is it okay for me to transfer my case to another country? Okay, so this is a good question to talk about in a way. Embassy performance changes from month to month, year to year. Sometimes, embassies, sometimes embassies do well in certain years. Sometimes they do badly. I can tell you that a few years ago, we were trying to put a lawsuit together to force Nairobi to behave properly. And at some point, they became one of the best performing embassies. But then they did some bad stuff in DV25. They only scheduled 421 cases up in I think it was November of 24 for DV25. And then they did nothing else until the final month of scheduling, and they processed 2 fairly large batches of cases. And so they've done okay in the end. It's not perfect. They've disappointed a lot of people, but it's okay. It's kind of all right. But it's not perfect. And so therefore a lot of people, thousands of people possibly, will be missing out in Nairobi, hence your concern. Okay. So But I would say you can't predict what they're going to do in the future based on what they did last year. It can change, point to point. And if I were you, I would wait until you know something more. The only thing is your case number is kind of on the cusp there. If you're going to move your case, you have to move your case really. Ideally, it has to be moved before you become current, right? The reason for that is that once you become current, if your DS-260 is processed and you're current, you enter into stage 4, which is AV status. And at that point, the embassy will send you emails that say things like, you are current for interview processing. And the email goes on to say, we are unable to unlock your form, for you to make changes or whatever else. They won't unlock your DS-260. So you can't change your address. And if you can't change your address and if you can't unlock your DS-260, it becomes very difficult to move your case to another embassy at that point. So you do need to, unfortunately, consider your case number. And at 37K, you're probably going to see the January data where we will know what Nairobi have been doing. You're probably going to see that before your case number is current, but it's a bit touch and go. If they did a couple of months of big increases, then that might be a little bit different, right? So pay attention to the visa bulletin. And if you decide you want to move, then do that before you become current, right? But it's a little bit early to make that decision right now, in my opinion. You have to weigh that up. Okay, so don't wait too long. Don't be too quick. But I can't tell you exactly when the right timing is. Kind of a crappy answer, I know, but there you go. That's what it is. Okay. When will be released the first 2NL letter of Nepal? I don't know. DS-260, Morris, are you doing DS-260 on follow to join? That rings a bell. I can't think of your position, Morris. You have to give me more details, but yeah, it does kind of ring a bell, but I'm not quite sure what your position is. So you're giving me little snippets of information. I can't remember everything with everyone I speak to. So contact me on britsimonsays.com and give me the full picture again. Okay. Hi, Simon. Just a quick question. I'm originally from South Africa, currently here in Texas on an F1. Will applying for DV this October, November impact my future immigration process? Should I go for it? Yeah, applying for the DV lottery doesn't do anything at all to your status, your current status, or future non-immigrant applications. The point at which you start to have an impact on your future non-immigrant processes is when you file a DS-260, which is an application for an immigrant visa. So that is when you've declared your immigrant intent, not entering the lottery. Entering the lottery is nothing, right? That's just like you did that randomly, just hoping you might win kind of thing. That doesn't mean a thing. So go ahead and enter, you'll be fine. Only if you're selected, and then when you're selected, you enter the DS-260, that's when you start to impact things a little bit. Okay, so you need to be a little bit thoughtful of that. Jamshid, yeah. Can a non-compliant picture of a derivative who is doing AOS inside the US lead to the entire case rejection? Principal applicant and other family members are doing CP. Jamshid, you've already asked me this question. I've already told you the answer. I don't know why you're asking again, but you asked through my blog, I believe. Yes, a non-compliant picture of a derivative can cause refusal of the whole case, right? The principal applicant is responsible for all of the photos of the derivatives that were uploaded. But I asked you in the blog to let me know why you're thinking about this and why you think the photo is non-compliant. How non-compliant? I mean, are you talking about it has a slightly pink background, or are you talking about you have a picture of a camel's backside, instead of your photo, and that person is going for follow to join, not follow to join, adjustment to status in the USA? I don't know, which is why I asked you in the blog for more information to try and understand where this question comes from. So give me better questions, I'll give you better answers. But I did already answer your question anyway in BritSimonSays.com. Hi, Simon. I'm in Rwanda. I have a case number of 2026 AF13K. Is there a chance of interview in October? You submit the DS260 end of May. There is a chance, but you probably would have got your 2NL already if that was going to happen. But the green cards that are given away from interviews in November are just as good as those ones given away in October. Same with December, by the way. So, why are you rushing? Like, this is like month one. Why is it important that you've got to be interviewed in October? Right? Relax. Maurice, okay, here we go. I had my AOS interview yesterday, still waiting for a decision to be made, just trying to secure my derivatives abroad. Okay, so at your AOS interview, you should have filed the I-824, right? Did you do that? Have you liaised with the field office so that you can arrange the backup interview? So I don't know. Anyway, Miate, Bridget. Good morning, sir. I want to thank you for what you do. You're very welcome. Thank you for thanking me. Please, what will be the legal advice for a J1 teacher from Cameroon with a pending asylum case, but was recently selected for DV26? Please, what are the steps and legal guidance to proceed? Secondly, my children are still in Cameroon, but I'm the principal applicant for the children. Okay. You need to go to a website called forums.immigration.com. And I'm sure Maurice, the person who asked a question just before you, would tell you this too. Go to forums.immigration.com and find a thread about adjustment of status for DV26. There is a person whose screen name is someone's mum. And she is incredibly knowledgeable about adjustment of status cases related to DV lottery, and she gives an amazing amount of information. She's got all the information you would need, and she is the person that you should check with in terms of your status, and explain to her how did you start the asylum case, what was the J1 like, were you out of status at any point. She's the person you need to ask, right? In terms of your family, you can do a process of adjustment status in the USA and then have your derivatives do a follow to join process at an embassy abroad. It gets quite stressful towards the end of the year. I think Maurice could probably tell you that. But it is possible. And so you have your adjustment of status interview, you file the I-824, and then your family are interviewed in the home country and they can come and join you. That's why it's called follow to join. Okay. So there is a process for that, but go ahead and speak to someone's mum. Ask her the questions you need to ask. Please do me a favor though. Someone's mum provides a lot of information, and a lot of it is already prepared, and she's got spreadsheets and other information which will answer 90-something% of your questions. So please do her and me the favor of studying that information before you just bowl into that forum and just ask questions that you could have answered yourself by just looking at the information that she's given. Okay. Timothy, what's up, Britt? Is it wise to hold on DS260 submission to watch embassy performances? For some people, yes, it might be wise. Who would it be wise for? If you've got a high case number, or even sometimes a medium case number, and you think your case number won't become current, or you think your country might be travel banned or whatever, and you're concerned about future non-immigrant applications, then maybe you need to hold on for a little bit, right? Maybe you do need to think of that way. But you need to weigh up all those factors. For most people, they should fill in the DS260 fairly early. Most people should do that. But some people probably should just hold off a little bit, particularly, as I say, if they've got a high case number. That makes a difference, okay? D. David Dixon says, hi, sir, I'm a DV26 winner, case number 29-something. I haven't received my 2NL yet. Do I have to pay money to get my 2NL? No, you don't have to pay any money. You haven't said what your case number really is. I know it starts with 29, but I don't know how many. Is it 29? Is it 290? Is it 29? Is it Africa? Is it Asia? I don't know. Is it 29,000? You haven't really made that clear. So I need to know the year, which you've told me. I need the region, and then the case number range, so that I know whether you're current or not, to be able to answer questions like this. But I can tell you, no, you don't have to pay your money to get, or any of your money to get into an L. It's not how the process works. You pay the fees at the interview. Okay. Trolley problem. Do you pull the lever or not? I don't know. Well, the silly trolley question. I'll have to. It's probably is that a TikTok thing? I don't know. I'm from Angola and have my case number 2026 AF 82K. I have chances to win the 2NL, to receive the 2NL. Too early to say. I don't know whether your case number is behind 40,000 people or 4,000 people. I literally don't know, right? Because we don't know how many selectees there are, right? So I can't tell you any prediction based on incomplete information. Noor says, can you please make a video for the entire DV process, like all the different forms we need to look out for, and what specific times during the DV process? I do have such a video. I've got on my webpage also, I've laid out the steps, in a way that you can read the whole thing. I've got that. You just need to go find it, right? But yes, I've got 300 or 400 videos by now, and it's probably a bit confusing to find some of those things. But on my YouTube channel, go to the FAQ, the FAQ section. There's videos are arranged based on that. And so for those commonly asked questions, like what's the process, I've tagged those videos into a specific playlist, and there's a FAQ playlist, so that would help you. Okay. But Matthew says, 30, I am to fill the DS260 for myself and that for my children back home. Yeah, typically that's what you do. Hello, Mr. Simon. 2026 winner 1, fill none for social media questionnaire. Considering the truth, which I don't have any, does it make me suspicious? Yeah, I think it does make you a bit suspicious. It is very unlikely these days that people don't have any social media, right? You got none. You got no social media. Really? I mean, you're comfortable enough with social media to be using YouTube to ask me a question, but you've got no social media accounts. Seems unlikely. And so, they will think that's unlikely. You don't have Twitter, X, whatever it is. You don't have Instagram. You've got none of those. Seems a bit unlikely. Hi, Brett. I'm Tanzania. My case number is 40,000. Do you think I have a chance for an interview? Probably. I don't know. We don't have the data to sort of really make educated sort of guesses about that. You have to wait and see. You also have to pay attention to how your embassy behaves, right? But right now you're asking me kind of a vague question about stuff where I've got no way to answer it. Okay. Okay. I'm from banned countries. Can I still apply? Will the passport rule be reinstated next registration? 2 questions there. You're from a banned country. Can you still apply for DV27? Yes, absolutely, you can. Even banned country people, the travel ban could be removed as quickly as it was implemented, right? So yes, you still apply. Will the passport rule be reinstated for the next registration? I don't know. When I made my video about the government trying to re-implement this rule, I pointed out in that very first video that they have left it kind of too late to do this for DV27. I believe technically they probably cannot implement this for DV27, but they might do it anyway. And they might do it and say, hey, if you don't like it, sue us. Maybe they behave that way. They have done before over other things. So we'll have to wait and see. We have to wait until we get the instructions, which will come out in about 5 weeks from now, roughly, I think. Okay, so we'll wait until then. Okay. What about mistake of country of eligibility on initial application? Oh, good point. I should have brought that one up earlier. Example, someone indicated Kiribati in Oceania region instead of Kenya in Africa region. DV26 and is current. Oh, wow. So somebody asked about the most serious mistakes in the entry that can't be corrected in the DS260. This is one of those. The basic rule about this is if you make a mistake on your country of chargeability to another country within your same region that you should have been allocated, then it is possible, not always the case, but it's possible to have that error forgiven. It is normally forgiven, right? So if you said you were born in France and chargeable to France, but you were actually born in Germany, that's not a big deal because both of those countries are in Europe, so you were still in the right lottery. In this case that you're suggesting here, you said you were born in Kiribati and actually it was Kenya. Then instead of being in the African region, you're in the Oceania region and therefore will be disqualified. No doubt about it, unless you have an excuse or reason why you did that. That is one of two things. There's only two possible excuses. Number one is before the entry, you were already married to someone who is themselves eligible to be chargeable to an Oceania country, right? Before the entry. You can't go fix that by getting married. This is one of the, another annoying person tried to argue this point with me just recently, another one, different one. There's this person who is one of the UK winners, who is actually Ghanaian that was living in UK or something. So there's a Ghanaian-born dude who entered the lottery as a UK winner, became selected as one of the 43, and was entered single. His Italian girlfriend, an annoying person, I have to say, is convinced that she can fix his problem by marrying him. So they've gone ahead and got married. She's from Italy. What the hell she thinks that's going to do, in terms of proving why he chose UK is beyond me. But she thinks she's spoken to some people on the internet or whatever, and she's read the rules, and she thinks that will fix the problem. But the problem that she isn't understanding, and the reason it won't fix the problem, is that you had to be married. You had that relationship that allows you to charge to the chargeability country of your spouse. Which is one of the two exceptions I'm talking to you about, WJ. That has to be established before the entry. You have to have been married to that person to rely on that relationship, later on. And she wasn't, and they weren't married. And so that Ghanaian is going to get disqualified. They just don't want to believe that at the moment. They're going to waste a bunch of money, and they got married for no good reason. Maybe they're in love, so that's a good reason, but they think they can fix that problem and they can't. So anyway, that's one way. You can claim to be chargeable to Oceania if you were married before the DV entry to someone from Oceania. That's one way. The other way is through parents. If your parents were in Kenya temporarily, they're not, and neither one of them can be Kenyans, right? If they were in Kenya temporarily at the time of your birth and they were stationed there, for some temporary reason, probably by being told to go there by an employer. If that's the situation, and one of them at least was born in Kiribati in Oceania, then you could use the country of your parents' place of birth as your chargeability in that exceptional way. But it's supposed to be that you were in your country of birth temporarily, your parents were there temporarily. You have to prove that temporary nature of it. And neither one of them can make that claim if either one of them is themselves Kenyan, right? From what you're saying, I think what you've done is just made the simple mistake of moving the mouse wheel in the original entry, and you went from Kenya to Kiribati, and therefore you're in totally the wrong region. In that case, if I'm assuming that correctly, and that you don't have one of those two exceptions, either through parentage being temporary in Kenya, or through marriage to someone who is born in Oceania region. If you don't have one of those two exceptions, then 100% certain you will be disqualified at interview. There is no doubt about that, right? And it is not worth wasting your money on an interview based on that vague hope, because there is no hope. You have to be disqualified, and no consular officer makes that mistake. They just don't. In fact, I mentioned earlier about KCC tagging or red flagging a case when they send it out to the for interview. So you could be scheduled for interview, but for sure, KCC would have picked up on that mistake and said, "Now, this doesn't seem right." But as soon as you show your birth certificate where you were actually born, yeah, you're dead in the water. You'll be refused. Can a DV25 lottery winner still get scheduled for interview before the end of September? I covered that earlier. There will be some, but not very many. Hybrid, I only added TikTok as my only social media handle, but I will use other socials too. Will that affect me? Why did you think it was okay to only partially answer the question? Why? I don't understand why people do this. If it says list all your social media accounts, why did you read that as saying list only one or two of your social media accounts? Just give us one as an example that you have social media. Why didn't you answer this properly? Like, I don't understand. It's not a good idea to only partially answer those questions. And in most cases, my recommendation is to unlock and correct the DS260. I think that's particularly important if you've got a medium or high case number, because you're going to be waiting anyway. You may as well correct the DS260. It's far better to have an accurate DS260 than wait and get denied later because you seem to be hiding something. Okay, so don't do that. DV26 winner from Iran. There are some arguments about having exemption for Iranian ethnic and religious minorities by embassies, which was made public by Curtis Morrison recently. How do you think about it? We're talking about a very, very small number of people in the minorities. But if that's truly your situation, then by all means try and get the exemption. I just don't think that's a very realistic thing that's going to happen. But there should be that exemption made for some people, I guess. And if Curtis is talking about that, then follow his instruction on that. You can try for that. But is that truly the case? Because they won't just say, "Oh, you're in a minority or you're a Christian." I mean, they're not just going to say, "Okay, just tell us something and we're going to believe it." They're going to actually ask for evidence of that, right? And then maybe that will go forward, maybe it won't. But you can't tell a lie in the interview, right? So it has to be true. Ruth says, I answered the DS260 form under education. I only put the month and the year accurate year as it is the certificates. Can it cause a problem? That's okay. So you said like July 2016 or whatever, you graduated rather than the 17th of July. That's okay. Like, it doesn't matter if it's just the year and the month or something, or even the year. Particularly if it's a long time ago. You won't remember the exact date, of course. That's all right. That's fine. Hello, Simon. I'm 26 winner, Asia. My case number is about 16,000. I'm Iranian. In case the travel ban changes for me, how is my chances with this case number? Any hopes? We don't know. I don't know how far the cases go in Iran in DV26. We don't have the data yet, right? We're not going to know that question until we're not going to know the data until, number one, we know the number of selectees, and number two, we know the distribution of those selectees in the number ranges. Nepal and Iran have cutoffs that are before the other numbers in the region. Last year, Iran went up to, I think it was 22,000. So there were Iranian cases up to 22,000, I think, from memory. It may be the same this year, in which case your sort of 16th, 22th, through the number range of Iranians. What does that mean? I don't know, because I don't have all the data. I don't know how many Iranians were selected. I don't know what the cutoff is, what the country limit is, and so on. It's too early to say, basically. Okay, you just have to wait and see. Hello, Simon. Do I fill up Greencard form I'm due fill up Greencard form, and I got dyslexia. It's difficult for me to read some of these things sometimes because you guys just mess with my head. I'm due fill up Greencard form, and I wrongly having typing error for my year of birth. But I do correct it when I fill my DS260 form in June this year. Is there any issues on that? Okay, so you incorrectly, so I'm gathering that you incorrectly put it on your DV entry, but you corrected it in the DS260 form. In a roundabout way, that's what you're trying to tell me, I think. And that's okay, that's fine. You corrected it, as I said earlier, as long as you correct the date of birth and other things in the DS260, that's fine. You'll be all right. Normally, unless, by the way, what's happened is that you entered the lottery 50 times with 50 different dates of birth to try and hide your multiple entries. If that was the case and they found those other entries, then they would disqualify you and ban you for life. So yeah, you don't want to do that. Hello, Simon. What would be the problem with Nairobi Embassy? Very slow with 2025. Kindly share. I mean, they're not very slow in that final month. They've done a lot of work in the final month, right? They scheduled a lot of cases. Now, why were they slow during the year? I don't know. They didn't sort of publish any of that information. But in the final month, they took 3 batches. They took 82 cases on July 18th. Then July 21st, they took another 370 cases. And on August the 8th, they took another 167 cases, right? So that's not slow. That's more than they had done for the rest of the year. So they had a good final month, but why they were quiet all the rest of the way through the year, I don't know. They don't publish that information. Okay. Couple more questions, then we'll call it a day because it's already been an hour and a half. I'm a winner of DV26, case number AF29. Oh, you've already asked the question. Hello, the American dream is slipping away from us. DV25, this is a once-in-a-lifetime chances, and we fear losing our future because of these delays. Morocco. Yeah. There's a lot of sad Moroccans at the moment. This process is a brutal process. This is in its rawest form. For some people, they have no problems. They get a low case number, their embassy is performing, their DS260 is processed quickly. They sail through this process and they never knew anything of the incredible emotional damage that is done during this process to a lot of applicants. Most of us, though, have high case numbers, or an embassy that's not cooperating, or travel bans come along and knock us on the head, or all sorts of things. I've been through this process as a derivative, and my case number was EU 31,000 and something, right? In my year, that was thought to be too high a number. So I know exactly what it's like to be sitting there panicking and worrying about the case number and about will I get interviewed and all this sort of thing. I then did adjustment of status. I got current. I did adjustment of status, and my field office dicked around with my case delayed me by 2 or 3 months because they didn't understand how the bloody thing was supposed to be done. And so I had to explain to them, and they still didn't understand it. In the end, my adjustment of status interview was held on September 2nd, I think it was. And eventually, and I was approved. But it was very stressful. And so I've always understood the stress that people go through because I went through that same process. And it doesn't work out for everyone. There's a lot of people that don't get their green card at the end, right? In DV25, over 131,000 people were selected, and only 47 or 48,000 green cards are going to be given out. So there are far more people not going to be happy than people are going to be happy. Being unhappy is part of this process. Not getting a visa is a pretty normal outcome from this process. It's brutal. It shouldn't be like that, but it is like that. Okay, a couple more questions then. Juba, I received my 2NL. I created my account with Avits, but it shows in progress, not letting me enter my information. Don't worry about it. You created your account with Avits. That's all you needed to do. Just that's fine. Relax. You don't need it. You don't need the Avits system to create an interview date for you because you've already got an interview date arranged. So just go to that date. Now you created the account, you're fine. Hi Simon, I'm a very special case. I like these ones that start like this. I'm scheduled for asylum interview in September 15th, 2025, which I applied for before, but I'm also a derivative applicant of DV26 through my husband, whose interview is scheduled on October 30th, 2025. Okay. My question is, should I choose the DV interview or is it compulsory to attend the asylum interview? And if my asylum is denied, can I request to stay? So that's complicated. I don't want to answer this question, right? I don't know what it would mean if you don't turn up for your September 15th interview in terms of your status. And I don't feel qualified to answer this question, right? I know very well that you can have two applications going at the same time, but if you deliberately sabotage one of your applications by not appearing for the interview, I don't know what that means to your case. And so I don't want to comment on that, right? I suggest you ask an expert like someone's mum at the forums.immigration.com forum. Ask her, or ask your lawyer. If you're using a lawyer, ask your lawyer about this. And make a wise decision, but be careful. Why wouldn't you go to the September 15th interview? It's kind of weird. Anyway, okay. Oh, okay. Last question here, Chris Smith. Hi, Simon. First time here, just subbed. Thank you for everything you do. Very welcome, Chris. I'm looking forward to October from the UK. Okay, so you're going to enter for the UK. Good luck with that. We've had some hassle over the last couple of years, as you may have read. And so hopefully UK entries will be properly handled in DV27. So fingers crossed for that. Okay. Okay, everybody. I think I've got some questions I didn't get to. Yeah, I'm just scrolling down. I've got a lot of questions I didn't get to. Oh, here you go. So this is the immigration forum again. I'm going to say it one more time. In fact, I'm going to post it. Let me post it. Let me give you this thing here. Right. I'm going to put the immigration forum link right in the chat, and you'll have that to look at. So Bemiati. Hopefully that's posting and you'll be able to see that under the YouTube channel. But I just put the link in there. Forums.immigration.com is the immigration forum where someone's mum is, and she's the person that knows about adjustment of status cases for DV lottery. Okay, so you definitely want to ask her. One last question here. Hello, Brit Simon. In one of your videos, you had promised to make a video on some of the shitty embassies to look out for in regard to past performances. I do have that. I have a video where I think I called them shitty embassies. Yeah. And I've got also a blog page which explains some of the shitty embassies, but their performance changes year to year. So I can't really sort of say that this embassy or that embassy is always going to be a shitty embassy. Some embassies have been consistently bad, like Ankara, for example, has been consistently bad for a few years now. I'd love to see them performing better again, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Lagos embassy has not received a case in years. They just decided to not do any work. Let me see the last time So they've got no cases again for DV25, and that's pretty awful when an embassy just says, well, we're not going to take any cases. So if you're a DV lottery winner in Nigeria and therefore you should be scheduled at Lagos, you're just going to wait around forever, because Lagos are never going to interview your case. Now, Nigerians are not eligible to enter the lottery, but that doesn't mean that someone from South Africa or Ghana or whatever isn't living in Nigeria, and therefore Lagos should be taking some cases, and they're not. I don't understand why they're not. That's a pretty shitty thing to do. So that's a shitty embassy, you know. So, but that changes year to year, right? So, as I mentioned before, Nairobi were a bad embassy. Then they became one of the best embassies. Then in this year, they've been sort of a bit weird and did a good job at the last minute. Various embassies behave differently from a month-to-month basis. So I can't really sort of say, exactly what the list of shitty embassies should be. But if you look at my blog, you'll see my thoughts from the past at that point in time, right? But it's only that point in time. All right, everybody, we'll call that a day. I hope this has been informative for you. I hope it's been interesting. If you liked this session, please give me a thumbs up. Let me know if you want me to continue doing these weekend live sessions. I enjoy it. I hope you do. I hope you do as well. But you can always ask me your questions on britsimonsays.com. So feel free to ask me there, and I will answer those questions. Okay? Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.